The maternity ward smelled of antiseptic and quiet exhaustion, the kind of place where emotions ran raw and every whisper felt louder than it should. Alina lay propped against white pillows, her body aching, her mind foggy with the shock and wonder of childbirth. Just hours earlier, she had brought a child into the world, a tiny life now sleeping in a transparent bassinet beside her bed. She should have been surrounded by warmth, reassurance, and congratulations. Instead, the first voice to cut through the stillness was sharp, impatient, and unmistakably hostile. Her mother-in-law, Valentina Sergeyevna, stood near the foot of the bed, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, eyes scanning the room with disapproval, as if the hospital itself had personally offended her. "I don't see why you're still here," she said coldly. "Everything is done. The baby is fine. You can go home." Alina blinked, certain she had misheard. She was barely able to sit up without pain, let alone walk out of the hospital. "The doctor said I need to stay at least 2 days," she replied softly, her voice trembling more from shock than weakness. Valentina snorted. "Doctors say many things. In my day, women gave birth and went straight back to work. No drama." She leaned closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "And don't think you'll be staying at my apartment afterward. I won't have chaos in my house." The words hit harder than the physical pain. Alina felt tears sting her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. This was not the moment she had imagined during long nights of pregnancy, not the welcome she had hoped for her child. Her husband, Maxim, was supposed to come later that evening. Valentina had arrived first, uninvited, and clearly determined to assert control. "You trapped my son with this baby," Valentina continued, her tone cruelly confident. "Don't pretend otherwise. You knew exactly what you were doing." Before Alina could respond, the door to the room opened again. Valentina turned sharply, ready to continue her tirade, but the words froze in her throat. Standing in the doorway was Maxim, and behind him, someone she never expected to see in her life, let alone in a maternity ward. It was her father, Victor, a man Valentina despised and avoided at all costs. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver creeping into his dark hair, he carried himself with quiet authority. His eyes moved from Alina's pale face to Valentina's rigid posture, and something hardened in his expression. "I think you should leave," Victor said calmly. Valentina's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She had not anticipated witnesses, especially not him. "This is family business," she finally snapped. "You have no right." "I have every right," Victor interrupted, his voice still even, but edged with steel. "My daughter has just given birth. If you think you can bully her while she's vulnerable, you're mistaken." Maxim stepped forward, shame written across his face. "Mom, stop. You're out of line." For a moment, Valentina looked around as if searching for support, but found none. The power she thought she held evaporated in seconds. Without another word, she grabbed her purse and stormed out, heels clicking angrily down the corridor. Alina exhaled, her body shaking as the tension finally released. Victor moved to her side, gently squeezing her hand. "You're not alone," he said softly. "Never again." The incident might have ended there, a painful family confrontation resolved by an unexpected act of protection. But later that week, the world was watching a different kind of confrontation unfold on live television, one that mirrored the same themes of pressure, misunderstanding, and boundaries being crossed. Chris Hemsworth sat on the brightly lit set of The View, smiling politely as the hosts introduced him. The interview was meant to promote his latest project, something light, entertaining, and safe. For the first few minutes, it was exactly that. Jokes were exchanged, the audience laughed, and Hemsworth played his role with practiced ease. Then the conversation shifted. Joy Behar leaned forward, her tone suddenly more pointed. She brought up celebrity responsibility, politics, and the expectation that public figures should use their platforms in specific ways. Chris listened, nodding at first, trying to answer diplomatically. But the questions kept coming, sharper each time, less like curiosity and more like accusation. "So don't you think staying neutral is just another form of privilege?" Joy pressed. Chris paused. "I think people are allowed to choose how they engage," he said carefully. "Not everyone wants to turn every conversation into a political battleground." Joy scoffed. "That sounds like avoiding accountability." The atmosphere shifted instantly. Smiles stiffened. The audience murmured. Chris straightened in his chair, his jaw tightening. With respect, he said, I came here to talk about my work, not to be lectured or boxed into opinions I don't hold. Joy pushed back, unwilling to let it go. The exchange grew tense, voices overlapping, the easy rhythm of daytime television replaced by discomfort. Finally, Chris stood up. I'm happy to have discussions, he said, his voice firm but controlled. But I won't be spoken down to. This isn't productive. And with that, he removed his microphone and walked off the set. The clip went viral within hours. Social media exploded with arguments, hashtags, and divided opinions. Some praised him for standing his ground, others criticized him for walking away. But beneath the noise was a familiar story, a person pushed past their limits, choosing self-respect over compliance. Back in the quiet of the hospital room, Alina scrolled through her phone while her newborn slept peacefully. She watched the clip of Chris Hemsworth walking off the View, replaying the moment he stood up and said no more. Something about it resonated deeply. For the first time since giving birth, she felt a sense of clarity. Boundaries were not acts of aggression. They were acts of survival. Whether in a maternity ward or under studio lights, the courage to say, "This is not okay," could change everything. She looked at her child, tiny fingers curled into fists, and made a silent promise. The cycle of intimidation would end here. No one would ever rush her, or her child, to the wrong station again. The first confrontation began quietly, almost deceptively so, as many of the cruelest moments in life do. The maternity ward was calm, wrapped in that artificial peace hospitals try to maintain, but beneath it pulsed exhaustion, vulnerability, and raw emotion. Marina lay in her bed, her body still trembling from the hours of labor that had ended only that morning. Her newborn daughter slept nearby, unaware of the storm gathering just a few steps away. Her mother-in-law, Lydia Petrovna, stood by the window, staring out as if judging the world beyond the glass. When she finally turned around, her face was tight with irritation rather than joy. There were no flowers in her hands, no smile of congratulations. Instead, she sighed loudly, making sure Marina heard. "Well," Lydia said, "I suppose that's done now." Marina frowned. "Done? Yes. The birth. There's no reason for you to stay here any longer. You're taking up space, and hospitals are full enough as it is." Lydia adjusted her coat, clearly ready to leave. "You can pack up and go." Marina felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over her. "The doctors said I need monitoring. I lost a lot of blood," she said quietly. Lydia waved a dismissive hand. "Doctors exaggerate. I gave birth twice with no fuss. You young women are too fragile." She glanced at the baby with a critical eye. "And I hope you understand, you won't be staying with us. My son needs peace, not a crying child and a wife who can't manage herself." The words landed like blows. Marina's chest tightened, her eyes burning, but her voice failed her. She had imagined many versions of this day, but none where she felt like an unwanted guest immediately after becoming a mother. "You knew what you were doing," Lydia continued, lowering her voice. "A baby is a convenient way to secure a man. Don't play innocent." Before Marina could summon the strength to respond, the door opened. Lydia turned sharply, prepared to assert herself again, but froze mid-motion. Her face drained of color. Standing in the doorway was Anton, Marina's husband, and beside him stood Marina's older brother, Oleg. Oleg was not a loud man, but his presence filled the room effortlessly. He took in the scene in a single glance, Marina pale and shaken, Lydia rigid with indignation. "What's going on?" Anton asked, his voice uncertain. Oleg didn't wait for an answer. "You," he said to Lydia, his tone flat, "are done here." Lydia scoffed. "This is between me and my son's wife." "No," Oleg replied. "This is you abusing my sister when she can't defend herself. And that ends now." Anton looked between them, realization dawning on his face. "Mom, what did you say to her?" Lydia opened her mouth, but the authority she usually wielded so effortlessly deserted her. She muttered something under her breath, grabbed her purse, and left without another word. The door closed behind her with a soft but decisive click. Marina broke down then, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. Oleg placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You don't owe anyone your silence," he said gently. "Remember that." Days later, the story had already begun to fade into something Marina could process rather than relive. She was home, learning the fragile rhythm of caring for a newborn, when the television caught her attention. A familiar face appeared on the screen, Chris Hemsworth, relaxed and smiling, seated on the set of The View. At first, the interview followed the usual path. Laughter, light-hearted banter, talk of films and family. Chris spoke warmly about fatherhood, about trying to stay grounded despite fame. The audience responded enthusiastically. Then the tone shifted. Joy Behar leaned forward, her expression sharpening. She steered the conversation toward social issues and public responsibility, pressing Chris to comment on topics he had previously avoided. He answered cautiously at first, choosing his words with care. "I think it's important to listen," he said. "But I also think not every conversation needs to become confrontational." Joy wasn't satisfied. She challenged his neutrality, implying it was a luxury afforded by his success. The exchange grew tense. Chris tried to redirect the discussion back to his work, but Joy continued pushing, her questions sounding more like accusations. At some point, the polite smile faded from his face. He straightened, his voice calm but firm. "I respect differing opinions," he said. "But I don't appreciate being told who I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to say." Joy responded sharply, the studio audience shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The easy flow of daytime television cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Chris paused, looked around, and seemed to make a decision. "I'm here for a conversation," he said, standing up. "Not a confrontation." He unclipped his microphone, placed it gently on the table, and walked off. The cameras followed him for a moment before cutting away. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Clips flooded social media. Commentators argued over whether he was brave or disrespectful, principled or evasive. Everyone had an opinion. Marina watched quietly, rocking her baby in her arms. The moment Chris stood up and left replayed in her mind, echoing something deeply personal. She didn't see arrogance. She saw someone refusing to be cornered, refusing to accept a narrative forced upon him. In the days that followed, Marina found herself thinking differently about her own experience. Lydia's words no longer replayed endlessly in her head. Instead, she remembered Oleg standing in the doorway, calm and unyielding, drawing a line that could not be crossed. Strength, she realized, did not always look like shouting or winning an argument. Sometimes it looked like leaving a room. Sometimes it looked like silence broken at exactly the right moment. As she held her daughter close, Marina understood something she wished she had known sooner. No one had the right to define her worth, her choices, or her timing. Not in a hospital room. Not on a television set. Not anywhere. And from that moment on, she promised herself she would never rush to the wrong station again, simply because someone else told her to hurry.